Okay. Hey, sis. Today we're talking about the kind of courage you don't see. You know, it's the kind of courage you feel in your chest before you make a decision that can change everything. Well, today I'm joined by Miss Marcelle Mentor. Well, today she's going to share her courage story. So let's just start with the first question. What decision in your life have that you had to make that felt the most risky at the time?
Mm. Well, when I came to the US, I was married to my children's father, and we had been having little issues for a long time. And I thought that maybe coming to the US and having a different focus and a new purpose would change things, but it didn't. And I knew that something was off with the marriage. I knew something was off with him. But I had two children. I'd been married for 15 years. And even though I knew that I should really leave him and that I couldn't, he was no longer trustworthy, it took me a very, very long time to do that. Um, and the thing that literally tipped it over tipped the scale over was the day when he slapped me across my face, and knocked my glasses right off my face. And I knew then that there was no way that I could stay. And so I was kind of pushed into a courageous decision, because even though I knew this was where I should have made a choice a while back, I couldn't. But that moment where he physically slapped me, um, was when I pulled myself together because I was so far away from my family in South Africa. We were all alone. I had nobody. Um, and I drew on the strength of my mother because I could hear my mother, because I had fallen when he hit me. And I could hear my mother in my head say, "Get up, get up." And I got up and I calmly called my children, and they were in their room, and the oldest one was 8, maybe. And I can't see without my glasses. And I said to him, "Can you see Mama's glasses? Can you please pick it up?" And he picked it up and he gave it to me. And I said, "Go to your room, pack pajamas and a t-shirt and another pants and your school books. We're leaving." And he said, "Where are you going to go? Um, you have nowhere to go. You have nothing. Where will you go?" And I said to him, "I don't know. But we're going." And I called my youngest son's second grade teacher, and she was like, come over, you can stay here till you figure it out." Um, and that's how I kind of made that decision. And honestly, it's been one of the best decisions of my entire life.
That was let's replay that for a moment. Let's backtrack because perhaps I should have mentioned it from the start that you were originally from South Africa.
Mm-hmm,
So here you are, from South Africa, new from South Africa,
mm-hmm,
living in New York, right?
mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Okay, with two small children,
Kids, yeah.
and you find yourself being physically abused
Mm-hmm,
by your then husband,
mm-hmm, mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
and you heard your mother's voice.
mm-hmm.
That was the courage.
That
That
was
was
the
that
courage.
whisper.
That
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 was the
was that whisper that I needed.
that was the clarity
Up, get
that's
up.
required.
Because I
Yes.
was so stunned because he had never like physically used violence against me. And I was so stunned and I just lay there for a moment and I was like, "Oh my God, what will I do? What's going on? I know nothing about how to do this." And he was my first boyfriend at 18 and I married him when I was 23. I knew nothing else except being with him. And so it was really hard because I think sometimes women stay because we don't know another way of life. We don't know um, how we can manage, particularly when we come in places that is so patriarchal, right? So, like marriage in South Africa is very patriarchal. Men are the head of the household.
Yes.
And I was raised like that, right? It was a belief system that I took in. And so that was really hard for me to, first of all, realize that I needed to go and then to actually go.
So let's go back to the moment that you're on the floor because he
Mm,
slapped you and you're on the floor. He knocked your glasses away. What were
mm.
you feeling? Can you recall the emotions that you were feeling at the time?
Um, I think just betrayal, incredibly hurt, incredibly scared,
Mm.
just like frightfully scared, like out of my mind, afraid of like, what will I do now? That was the question because I knew we couldn't just brush over that as if it was nothing. I knew in that moment that something big would change in my life right there, but I didn't know what and I didn't know how.
Yet through that moment of fear, you pushed through it to give your child instructions
Yeah,
for what was about to be your departure.
yeah, yeah. I had to. I have had my kids were 7 and 8 at the time. Two boys who just came from South Africa, new at school, new in the US. So the way South African women are raised, it's a very patriarchal society, but
Mm.
women are incredibly strong and incredibly resilient. And in the face of all kinds of strife and things, women in South Africa are the backbone of that country. Um, and I knew that even though this had happened to me, I had to pull myself together in that moment. Because I didn't want to scare my children, but I did want to be firm with the fact that we were leaving. Yeah.
So courageous of you.
Mm.
So courageous. In your speaking to your son, I imagine that you tried to stay calm or
Yep. Yep. Wiped my face before he came in, stood there and said, "Can you, my glasses fell, can you find it?" Picked it up and he gave it to me and I said, "Okay, let's go pack your things. We're leaving."
was your ex-husband still standing there at this
Mm.
time?
Mm. And like talking to me in this hush whisper, saying, "Where do you think you're going? You have nothing. You have no one. Nobody will come for you."
Was that the first time that he was physically abusive?
Yes, yes. And I moved the first time because we tell people, right? I'm an educator. We tell other women, if he hits you the first time, it's going to happen again. We know this. It is the way the abusers work. They gain power from it. So even though I was all those feelings of fear and worry and sorrow, I knew that I could not stay in that moment.
Okay, so that decision required a great deal of courage.
Mm,
I'm so grateful to you for sharing,
mm,
um, for being so transparent about your experience.
mm.
Was there anything, any thought that came to your mind that almost stopped you from leaving?
Yeah, I was afraid that I didn't
Mm.
have a place to go, that I had no plan. Um, like I hadn't planned it out. It's not like I could say, "Oh, we're going to so and so, and then we're going to work from there." I hadn't planned anything. Nobody knew. I hadn't shared. I had no friends. I knew no people. I was in the country for 9 months. Nine
Wow.
months.
Did you have any money?
I had my bank account, yes. Um,
Okay.
yeah, and so I had that. And so my youngest son's teacher was just very gracious and we stayed there for a while and he kept saying, "Come back, I'm sorry, will never happen again." But I knew that that could not be the process and that it
Did he
would
try to
not.
I'm sorry to cut you off.
No,
Did he try to stop you from leaving?
no, no. I think in that moment he may have been as stunned by the fact that he did what he did. He grew up in a house of an abusive father, and it
Mm,
is one thing that he told himself he would never do, yet he devolved into it.
yes, yes.
And it
Wow,
was crazy because we were married for 15 years and we were together for 5 years between that. So it had never happened in the 20 years before that moment.
wow,
Mhm,
wow. That's okay. So that's not a new marriage. That's years into a
mhm,
relationship
mhm,
before that occurred.
mhm.
So there was no other form of abuse prior to that? No, because there are other forms.
I think I realized afterwards in going to therapy that I had been emotionally abused for years and manipulated, and that in fact he had groomed me. I didn't understand the terms of that um, when I was new and young. I understand those terms now. I'd known him since I was 18. He was my first boyfriend, right? We
Mhm.
say there's a saying in South Africa that translates in Afrikaans to he raised you by his hand, meaning he taught you how to act, what was appropriate behavior, and what you would do. And I realized afterwards that even though I was fairly well educated, I was an educator, was a teacher, I had degrees behind my name, that I had been emotionally abused and manipulated for years.
Well, culturally speaking, um, how did that how did that decision to leave impact upon your cultural beliefs as you speak about the way families are managed in South Africa?
Yeah. Um, it it pushed against everything that women, for the most part, used to do in South Africa. Women my age, I think younger women are a lot more attuned to themselves and their self preservation. But I think women, I'm 56, I think women my age who were born in the late 60s, 70s, we didn't think like that. And in fact, the first time that we went back to South Africa, the boys and I, because my parents had sent some money and we went over the summer, we went home. And I was sitting in my mom's kitchen with my female cousins. And one of my cousins said, "There's still time. You can still fix it. You just have to try harder." And I
Mm,
said, "What does that look like? Trying harder. Should I give him my other side of my face to beat? Should I give him my whole body to beat? Should I let him disrespect me some more? Should I know that he is having an affair and be okay with that? Is that what trying harder looks like?" And then she said to the others, "Do you see how she is? She's very American now, been in America for over 1 year, and now she's very American." And I remember sitting there looking at this cousin whose husband was a raging alcoholic
mm.
who had for years embarrassed her in company, being so drunk, falling about, kissing other women in front of her. And she had the temerity to tell me I should try harder. And I think my resolve just pulled together then. And I was like, what does that look like for you? And so I get that a lot. I've lived in the US for 21 years now, and I get that a lot where my family will say, Miss America. And I'll be like, yeah, it's okay. But I'm outspoken now, and I wasn't. I people laugh when I tell them. People who have learned to know me in the last 20 years laugh when I said to them, "I was a very obedient wife," and they always say, "We can't believe you were ever obedient." I was like, I was.
It,
for,
it,
for 20 years of my young adult life, and when my children were little, I was very, very, very obedient, and I did what I was told. And now I very rarely do what I'm told, and so that's an interesting shift. Now I see things and very different from women my age in South Africa. Yeah.
oh, but your family said refers to it as being very American,
Hmm.
but it's something that I'm sure after your experience, you would want even your cousin who with the alcoholic husband
Hmm.
to assert herself if she finds
Hmm.
herself in the
Hmm.
same situation.
hmm And it's interesting, right? Because this one move and the way I think about women and women's rights, I realized afterwards in my family and my extended family that young women were looking to me.
Yeah.
And my one of my nieces, when she was dating this man, and he ended up smacking her, and they were out, I forget where they were, but pretty far from home. And she picked up the phone and she called the parents to come and get her. And he was like, "What are you doing?" And she was like, "I'm going home. This is done. We're done." And he said, "Oh no, but it's sorry, the things they say." And she was like, "No." And she said to me afterwards, she said, "Auntie, I remember you telling the story of how you got up and you walked out. And I look at you now and I'm like, that was a strong thing to do. And I don't want to be a weak woman." Right. And she said, I just, I couldn't see it. And so I left. And so it's interesting for me that like just that one singular moment. And I don't know, whether it's courageous or whether I'm forced into doing the courageous thing, but it has a ripple effect where others get to see your actions and mirror that for themselves too.
I believe that courage is a muscle that you
Yeah,
build.
yeah, yeah,
That courageous act over time just gives you the strength to be that much more courageous
yeah,
going forward in your life. And I also believe that courage is infectious, that your being courageous can inspire someone else to be courageous. So thank you for asserting yourself and standing up for yourself in that moment.
yeah, yeah,
Now, what would you say to a woman facing the same decision, finding herself in a same situation?
yeah. I would say get out. And I do understand that for some people it's so hard to do because they're tied up into that relationship financially, they're tied up emotionally, but nobody gets to put their hands on you. Nobody gets to abuse you. You would let nobody else do it to your children, to your sister, to your mother. So why is that okay that that happens to you, right? What makes you so different that you have to stay in an abusive relationship? And something you said earlier that really sits with me too. People always think that when we think of violence, we think of a physical thing. But there are many kinds of abuses in relationships, and emotional abuse is really, really crazy because people can make you believe things about yourself that are non-existent, right?
Yes.
But they believe it because they say it so many times and they act on it, so it becomes a true thing or a real thing in your mind. Um, and that's a hard thing to bear. But I would say get yourself as safe as possible, and when you are ready, if it means that you have to squirrel away some money first, where you have to hold on, like plan it, but don't stay. Do not stay.
Now, we spoke about the whisper, the clarity that came to you in your mother's voice. Um, what would you whisper to Marcelle uh, at a younger Marcelle, and before that moment? What would you
Mhm.
whisper to her in that moment that you've learned from that experience?
I would tell her that she's stronger than she thought she was, and that she's more capable than what she thought she was, and more resourceful, and that people love her, and that people care. Because often when we're in this situation, we think that there's nobody there. And it was crazy when I started telling people, people just gave me so much support. And that I, in fact, am quite okay, right? I was used to living in his shadow, but I realized afterwards that I have my own sun orbiting. I am the sunshine, so it's like it's okay. Um, but I would tell her not to be afraid because there is something bigger, better out there. Um, my cousin who left her husband at 63 in South Africa called me and said, I left him, and I was like, oh, and she said, I thought I could tell you because you wouldn't judge me. And she was like, yeah, I feel nothing, and so I left, and I was like, there you go. You're okay. And she's great, right? She's having the best time. She travels, she sees her kids, and she's happy. She lives alone. And so I feel like, so she said, people asked her, is there someone else? And she said, yes, there's someone else. It's me. I'm
Yes.
someone else. And so I think
Yes.
that's the thing, right? That I would whisper that we have to value ourselves more than anybody else values us. Before anything else, we have to put ourselves in that value position that we give to other people.
Yes. These are the greatest lessons that come from
Mm.
a courageous act. Well, I think we've at a good place to pause because I'd love to speak further. I'll
Yeah.
speak with you further on this because what you shared today is a story that took real courage
Mm.
because you looked at um, staying versus leaving.
Mm.
That was a very real, courageous decision to make. And I just want to say, as we bring our time together to a close, for any woman watching this who feels stuck in a similar situation as Marcelle, who's questioning whether or not she can make her move, let your fear fuel your
Mm.
courage. And if you need support taking that next step, my link is below. So thank you for being here and thank you, Marcel, for sharing your story with us today.
Thank you, Joy.